Hello, so this is not necessarily a review as much as just a compare and contrast between an older, probably a 10-year-old pull-out faucet that I used to have with my newly installed Kohler Maleko. Not much on pronunciation, so I'm going to show you the model number. I replaced a probably 10 to 15-year-old Moen pull-out faucet, so it was not dissimilar from this, but I'm not picking on Moen so much as I just think it's probably because of the 10 or 15 year modern upgrades that Kohler made, and I don't know, Moen might have this as well, but here's what I recommend if you're going to replace one of your faucets, and this is really important. The last one I had a washer that went around the base, and then it had a big brass nut, and back behind the sink I have a really tall deep sink, so it's a tall reach. It took me hours to get it tight enough where this faucet was tight. That was 10 years ago, and I never really got it super tight, but over the weekend I've spent several hours trying to get the old one off. So it was very frustrating that back behind the counter, you know, in a really tight confined space, I never could get it very tight, and yet for 10 years we had a, you know, not super loose, but looser than I would have liked faucet. Well, I'm sure all the brands have this now, but if not, I know Kohler has it, and I'm going to just try to show you here, if you can see, instead of getting the nut right up against the bottom of the counter, which is very difficult to do in a small spot, all you've got to do now is get the nut a few millimeters or centimeters. Looks like they recommend a 1/4 of an inch, you know, up underneath there when you're up on your back with a little flashlight, and this is at your arm's reach. You can't really tell what you've gotten, but anyway, you get it pretty close, and then you finish it off by tightening these 2 screws. They've added this little metal plate, and the metal plate is actually what holds the tension on the bottom of the counter, and you use these 2 screws, and this is super tight, and hopefully I'll never have to take it off. But if I do have to take it off, all I'll have to do is loosen 2 screws and then remove the nut by hand. So I thought that's a really brilliant design, and I hope they all have it. But if not, you should not try to install one without one if you have limited access, which is what I had. Alright, so a couple of features that I prefer with this one over the Moen. Again, maybe Moen has completely solved this or changed this. I don't know. Again, I'm not picking on them as much as this could be age-related. But the first one is they have a magnet right up here in the pull-out portion, and this is quite lightweight. On my older one, the shaft of the handle, you know, it was like they wanted you to have a big handle, and so it weighed quite a bit, and therefore the wire wrapped tube that went down into the cabinet was quite heavy, and so it was quite unwieldy with that long handle. You had to pull it out and around, and then you only had a certain amount of range. I don't think I can show you the range on this one, basically due to having a shorter handle to the hose is extensive. I can get it outside of the sink. On the other one I could barely reach, and due to the long handle I could never do anything like get the edges of my sink. I could never do this, for instance. So it's really cool that they've done that, and they've got a little magnet in here that holds that in there, so the cord doesn't have to be so long, the weight doesn't have to be so long. And another thing I like about this one is my older one had a much bigger handle. It was on top, and it was very difficult, sorry for the finger, it was very difficult to get the temperature adjusted delicately or the water flow adjusted very precisely, because the knob was so big and on top that it would fall down. So you'd push it up higher and you get more than you wanted, and then you brought it down slowly to get it just right, and then eventually, if you bumped it or over time, the weight of the handle would come down and shut the water off, and getting the temperature was just quite tweaked was just quite difficult. With this one, I can make just very minute adjustments on the water. Oops, I want it to be on the other type. So to show you that, I can make it really, really, really precise. I could never get this small of amount of water. Look at that. That's kind of annoying, isn't it? Just notice that. But anyway, I could never get a trickle out of my other one. That would have been impossible. So, not that I don't know when I ever need a trickle, but the point is, I have much better precise control. This doesn't move at all, and the temperature is, I can dial it in just exactly the way I want it, and I could not do that with a bigger handle. And I am going to give Kohler a little negativity here. It wouldn't have killed him to mark. Put a little couple of dots on there with the temperature. Now, of course, a lot of people could care less. And in about a week, I'll have it memorized, and it won't matter, and I'll have a nice clean faucet without color dots on it. So I'll probably change my mind on that. And just so you know, C is close is cold, and H doesn't have anything, but you know, you only need to know where cold is. So cold is close, C, CC, and that's how I remember, and that's how I'm going to memorize it. So anyway, this thing wasn't cheap, but I certainly felt like I got my money's worth. I'm most satisfied that I was able to get it tight easy. Just as an example, probably took me 3 hours to install the last one, 3 hours to finally get it out. It took me about 15 minutes on the outside to get this installed. It's already installed better than the other one ever was. And that is the end of my ditty on if you've been hesitant to get a new pull-out faucet, I wouldn't hesitate anymore.